fire and the air elements in your body. And that, basically that raises you to a place of where you're, in the Indian terminology, they say just consciousness, Then you're just consciousness, and you're not imprisoned by your form, and you're not imprisoned by concepts like time, There's a beginning and an end to me, That type of imprisonment, right? Like my birth and my death. That's my limitation as a result of these karmic predispositions. So you eliminate all that. What does it look like in the body? It looks like that, as I say, through these practices of hatha, the hatha practices are designed to decrease your earth element and your water element. What does that mean? It means that they're designed to decrease your phlegm and the fluid nature of your body and the solidity of your body, the mass of your body. The tissues in your body, particularly that harbor toxins, fat tissue especially, and phlegm. So those sorts of, and basically, what does it mean? It means you get lighter. You get lighter from a point of view of how much do I weigh, but you also are getting lighter in terms of the fact that you're increasing the capability of your body to transfer energy and to communicate energetically as opposed to with this kind of a body. So literally, you're increasing fire, kundalini, Shakti kundalini they call it, and that increases your air, because basically what it's doing is it's burning up the constituents like water and earth. So then immortality, immortality is another way of saying heaven, you could say. Immortality is the goal of yoga. And it looks like not having to be subject to this kind of body where the earth, the solidity, you're a prisoner to your solidity. So, for example, if you were able to sustain a state of happiness all of the time, and then you, not only that, but then you got to move into the areas of starting to see to the happiness of other people, which is an even higher state of consciousness than being happy all the time, then it might look like you might be able to think of, for example, my friend who just lost her partner, and maybe I would be able to manifest a pussycat in her life just like that, without necessarily having to go to the SPCA and buy one and go there and present it to her. Or maybe I somehow, psychically or energetically or otherwise, can transmit to her some sort of a beautiful situation like the changing of the color of the leaves, on the island where we both live. And she would have a perception of that as something so intensely beautiful that she would write a new album. She's a musician, I'm just making this up as I go along, and I'm just saying that ability, that state of being happy all the time and being able to see to the happiness of others is not so. You can think about it and understand how it could be so. That's all I'm saying. You can imagine, right, how that could be. Each of you can think, oh yeah, okay, I can imagine how I might be able to do that. So it's not so like, it's not so out there, I'm not that out there. I'm actually right here. And so are you, and there's a reason for that. So the hatha practices are designed for that purpose. That's what they do. So the hatha practices come from primarily from a text called Hatha Yoga Pradipika, and some of the people in this room have had the very good fortune of attending some events in the last 2 weeks with a Swami named Swami Muktibodhananda Saraswati. I don't have it with me. Does anyone?
I do.
No. Oh, you do. She's the translator and commentator of the Sanskrit text called Hatha Yoga Pradipika. And all of the modern day yoga that we're practicing these days, you know, in India and in the West, is coming from this text primarily, Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Maybe, Leonardo, you could pass it around to those ladies at the back there. Linda, Miriam, and Laura. Linda, Miriam, and Laura. And everyone else you know, right? So anyway, that Swami Muktibodhananda was just here, and it was really wonderful to have her. She's clearly an authority on these practices. And that book that she has translated was compiled by an Indian yogi in the 15th, 16th century, Yogi Svatmarama, and he compiled the 4 chapters in that book. The first one is asana, the second one is shatkarama, purification, which I just talked about. The third one is mudras and bandhas. So, you know, we've all graduated directly to chapter 3 here, bypassing 1 and 2, because clearly you're all doing your asana practice. And you look very much like you've done, you know, enough purification that somehow, you know, you're, and probably you've all done some pranayama practice. Can I assume that that's the case? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So then, once you've done that, right? So once you've gotten to the pranayama practices, which are even more powerful. So, you know, as the chapters progress, it all gets like, the ante gets upped, you know? The ante gets upped and it gets more and more powerful. But if you, like, for example, if you really do try to go to chapter 3 without having done 1 or 2, likely you would blow up, you know? Likely you would literally blow up. And this kind of thing happens when people suddenly start doing extremely advanced pranayama practices and they start holding their breath and doing retentions and stuff like that, and you can really go crazy. So it is very important to, first of all, to do things in the proper sequence, but most importantly, to have a teacher directing you is the most important thing. So chapter 3 deals with mudras and bandhas. Mudra means gesture in Sanskrit. Gesture, you know, like mudra, right? This is the common, everybody knows that this is a mudra, right? But in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, yeah, it does mean this, but it also means many other ways of forming this kind of a seal, a gesture, which is like a seal, like the bandhas. And the words bandha and mudra are very often interchanged in the scriptures, like Hatha Yoga Pradipika. They're using mudra for 10 practices in that text and bandha for the 3 practices that are commonly known to us in the West, Jalandhara, Mula, and Uddiyana Bandha. That comes from Hatha Yoga Pradipika. But there are other texts, you should just know this, because you might hear it differently, you know. There are other texts like Geheran Samhita and Shiva Samhita where some of the things we call bandhas are called mudras and vice versa. So just to know that they're sort of interchangeable. Mudra, you know, as they say, you think, oh yeah, mudra, you know, jnana mudra, chin mudra most commonly, right? But mudras are seals that we create in the body for the purpose of locking in the prana that you have managed to bring to a highly refined state through pranayama practice. So when you do pranayama practice, then you can, after a long time of practicing pranayama, you can bring mudras and bandhas to the practice. These practices are designed to seal or lock in the prana, and then that causes the prana to go into the central channel. And that's basically the goal. So when that happens, then the Shakti Kundalini gets to rise, this energy that lies dormant at the lowest of the chakras. And that heat energy rises through the central channel, and the goal is for it to reach the Sahasrara chakra, the crown, and then that melts a substance, which is called soma. And you want to lock that into the body too. So that at that point you apply other mudras. So that's like another workshop in a few years when we practice the mudras and the bandhas. And then maybe next year you'll all come to Swami Muktibuddhananda's retreat because she's coming back. And then she'll tell us more about that. I have no doubt. So basically that's the way it works. That's the way it looks. That's the syllabus of that particular text. And in this course we're going to talk about the bandhas, but just by necessity, in order to talk about the bandhas, you have to talk a little bit about the chakras that are affected by the bandhas that we're going to do. And the chakras that we're talking about are the Muladhara chakra. Muladhara chakra is directly awakened by Mula Bandha practice. And then we're going to talk about Swadhisthana chakra. Swadhisthana chakra is directly affected by 2 mudras that we're also going to learn as kind of like a bonus to the 3 bandhas. And then Manipura chakra at the navel, the solar plexus, is directly affected and awakened, and you intensify the awareness of it through Uddiyana Bandha. And then the Vishuddhi chakra is awakened and energized by the Jalandhara Bandha practices. So why are we doing all that again? So we're doing all that so that we can learn how to harness these pranic energies and bring them out of the side channels and into the central channel. And why are we doing that again? So that we can gravitate ourselves up to raise our consciousness to a state beyond concern just for ourselves. And that happens gradually. Farah and I were just talking. How does that work, right? How it works is that super refined pranic energy, as it rises and as you get the pranas into the central channel, it's the 2 side channels that force our perception of ourselves and others as being somehow different and separate, which then gives rise to, well, if there's you and me, then there must be mine and yours.
Question. If the prana is coming at the Sushumna Nadi, so every time you practice pranayama, let's say that has happened for you and you become enlightened or happy or whatever, is that continually happening then? Every time you would be doing breathing practices, or it's a one-time deal, you feel it, it happens, it's over, you've got it? Or
I'll let you know when I find out.
Or is every time you have a breathing practice,
we'll get back to you
all
on
over
that.
Again? Yeah.
No. Okay, so let's talk about it from a point of view of pranayama. And actually, the point of pranayama, and in the Yoga Sutras, Master Patanjali defines pranayama as both an expansion of the breath and a restraint of the breath, right? And that's true. It means both, depending on a few things which have to do with the Devanagari, the Sanskrit script, and the way it's written, because it's a couple of long A's in there. But anyway, so it's the expansion of the breath, and it's the restraint of the breath. And so the purpose of pranayama is to eventually arrive at what's called kevala kumbhaka, which is spontaneous retention. It's not like not like a forced retention like that, but a retention that is completely spontaneous, and you actually effect that retention using the bandhas in a very subtle way. Not even like you know what I mean? It's very subtle, right? And as you do that, the retention of the prana inside gets longer and longer and longer and longer. And one time when I was doing YTT a long time ago, I asked one of my teachers, so what does that look like in an enlightened being? Like what kind of like pranayama does the Buddha do, right? Yeah. This is the very question I asked him. And we were talking about 21,600 cycles of breath per day, and how pranayama practice is designed to decrease that number. So my question was, well, how many are we talking about, And he said 108. That's not many. So basically you're in a state of stillness. Basically, you're in a state of stillness. Because when you do that, as you bring the breath to stillness, the thoughts, which are indivisibly connected to the breath and therefore the prana, the thoughts are also stilling at the same rate that the prana is, at the same rate that the breath is becoming still, the thoughts are becoming still. Shh. See what I mean? Like I just made you listen, and you all, your breath just stopped because I just said one thing, and you all, it's like that. And you want it to be like that, spontaneous, you know. And the interesting thing about the Hatha Yoga Pradipika is that chapter 4, it's called Samadhi, and it's also very much about what's called Nada Yoga, which is the yoga of sound. And Swami Muktibuddhananda told us a very interesting thing, and that is that as you withdraw the senses, you know, when you do this process of going from 21,600 to 108 breaths, right? What's happening is that your thoughts are withdrawing, your breath is withdrawing, your sense perceptions are all withdrawing. And the last sense to withdraw is sound. So when you're in this extremely subtle, extremely still state of meditation, just on the edge of samadhi, then Nada Yoga is the yoga of choice, according to the system of Hatha Yoga. And you know, you could say that that's what Nada Yoga is. It's just and that's what you do. And you move the awareness from external sound into internal sound, and then internal sound more and more and more and more, and you start withdrawing that sense of sound. And then not samadhi, in samadhi, there are certain sounds which they say you hear when you enter into a state of samadhi. And those are the sounds of the pranic energies in the subtlest body. When the prana is exclusively running in the central channel, certain sounds are said to happen. So, literally, you're listening for them, right? And you anytime, you know, you want to, I do this a lot when I just need to calm down for a second. I just think, shh. It's very fast and very effective as a tool, you know. Does that answer your question? Kind of?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Like, I guess I'll have to experience that, or just hear somebody else's experience on it.
It's pretty, it's not often that, well, I don't know if you ever really hear a description of the experience, because it's kind of like beyond, you know, verbalizing, they say, you know. But what it is that there are many, many, many varieties of descriptions of the how. And people come up with all sorts of really, I think, really powerful processes that, of every kind, you know, of every possible kind for all the different sorts of beings that there are and people that there are, all sorts of different processes, you know. And some people are really, you know, getting off on like a Zen meditation type of a practice, and other people are really getting off on this kind of a very physical practice, you know, doing lots of shatkarmas and like a pranayama practice, you know, an asana practice, and the mudras and things like that. And so this happens to be my personal preference in terms of a path. And that's why I'm here, you know, telling you about it, because this is the thing that I like to do. But there's so many, you know, there's so many different ways to arrive at that state.
Yeah, so, you know, I did the teacher training at Langara, and we've learned all the bandhas. But then when you're teaching a class, you're hardly. I found myself not using them,
Right.
and then there's not enough time. Or
There
it wasn't,
isn't.
in your
It's true.
hour and 15-minute class, how much
Yeah.
can you throw in there?
Well, that's a long class these days from my experience. This 45-minute classes. So it's very difficult, and what you're asking is a very good question, actually. It's a very good question. And I my response to you is teach workshops. That's what I do. I don't teach yoga classes, actually, not only because I live on Gabriola and it's like impossible to commit to teaching a class anywhere, but also because it's kind of frustrating, just in the way that you're saying.
Yeah, it's just not enough time. And then that led me to also not practice it.
Right.
And then I'm like, oh yeah, well, how did I do that again?
Right.
And then, searching for
Yeah.
a way. And
Yeah.
so then to relearn.
But in an asana class, so anyway, we'll do it right now. We'll begin, and then maybe you'll pick up one or two things that you can do in a class. Certainly I do one or two things in a sort of a class setting, and we'll do some asana too, and use the bandhas in an asana context as well as in a pranayama context. So let's come to a comfortable seated position. Sort of, you could do like Vajrasana, or you could do Bhadrasana, this kind of a position, or with a block, under your buttocks, anything that's working for you. Generally speaking, the positions of choice for meditation, pranayama type practices is either swastikasana. This is swastikasana where the two ankles are stacked, one on top of the other. And then sometimes, because if you're bony or something or it hurts, you could put a piece of material, blanket like that between the two ankles. That's one thing. You can, as Floriana is doing, you can sit in a chair, and if you're going to do it that way, then it's very important to sort of prop yourself on the edge of the chair, come forward a little bit, so that you're not slouched into the chair, the back of the chair, and as she's doing, putting her feet on a bolster like that. That's a really good idea for, we did a very long retreat, and there were times when my practice was in a chair like that, and so you really have to get good at offering that kind of option for people. Then the other option is called Siddha Yoni Asana or Siddhasana. Siddhasana is what it's called when it's men doing it. Siddha Yoni Asana is where you put your heel, one or the other of your heels, into the vagina, just into the vaginal opening, and then the other foot comes over and on top of the bottom heel. The foot tucks in between the calf and the thigh, and this bottom foot, you could draw the toes up between the calf and the thigh on the other side as well. So this is a much more locked position, and it's the position of choice just because by virtue of the fact that you've created a seal, right, of the lower gate, the mula, like not an energetic seal, but a physical seal with your heel, this is very conducive to these kinds of practices. Kind of assists the bandha. And then lotus is the most stable position for meditation or pranayama or anything like that because of the fact that the legs are locked into Padmasana. Not many people are comfortable in Padmasana. Is anybody here comfortable in long, like, the time it takes to do a practice, an hour plus, right? That's a long time to be in Padmasana for most of us here in the West. But it is optimal because by virtue of the fact that the legs are locked up the way that they are, the prana cannot go downward. It's forced up. And it does get forced up the legs and up into the central channel, hopefully, in combination with the practices. So failing that, we can do Siddha Yoni Asana like this, or we can do the Swastikasana. You could do Sukhasana. Sukhasana is where you have one foot in front of the other, like this, easy kind of pose. And hi, what is your name?
Sevi.
Hi, Sevi.
I missed that. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. We were worried about you. Where were you? Did somebody find you? Or you figured out that you were at the wrong place, did you?
No, we were talking. Marisha sent me yesterday an email.
Yes.
And then she gave me an address, but I googled it, it was somewhere else.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't get the email because I thought that was the address.
Anyway, come in, come in. This was
So unfortunately, it ended up being a different address. Hello, everyone.
Come over here, Sylvie.
Yep, as long as
I think this is okay. Maybe if she takes her mat back a little.
maybe.
Yeah. If you just pull your mat back a little, that should be good.
I'm just checking. Yeah.
Okay. So, anyway, somebody will catch you up, Sevi, okay? Maybe Maurice. Nice to meet you. I'm
Hi, nice to
Padma.
meet you. I'm Sevi.
Yeah, nice to meet you. I've heard a lot about you. You have a
Finally
son,
met.
right?
Yes.
Yes. Sherry has told me about you and your
Oh.
son. So, okay.
Sorry about that. And the bus didn't came.
That's okay. Who was here last time? Just Floriana and Leonardo, yeah. Last time, we did a meditation practice. It talks about widening the circle. We've talked about it a little bit today. We won't do that meditation today, but I think that there's probably a way that all of you here could get a recording of that portion of the audio from part one of this workshop. And that might be a very good idea to get a recording, an audio of the widening the circle meditation. So maybe somehow we'll figure that out for you, okay? But basically, that meditation allows us to experience the fact that we've been saying, right, there's you and there's me, and the twain shall never meet. And, as soon as there's a you and a me, then there's a yours and a mine. And then automatically you've drawn a circle, an imaginary circle around yourself. And if you're so fortunate as to have children, then that circle gets to be a little wider, and you enclose the children in the circle which is me. Yeah? Your partner, you'll enclose in the circle which is me. Right? And then as your consciousness raises and as you get to experience the pranas in the central channel more and more, and as our concern shifts from concern for me and mine to others, and eventually a bigger and bigger and more others, then your circle gets wider and wider and wider and wider and wider until the circle is basically, it's an infinite circle. And so you've encircled all beings, all the knowable beings of the universe in your arms, and they are me. And anything and everything that you might ever have done for me, automatically and spontaneously, you do for everyone in your circle. So that's what they say it looks like when you're a Buddha, or an enlightened being. So 108 breaths and this ability to hold the whole world in your arms. Do you have a question?
Well, I was just thinking, so if you learn to widen that circle, it happens spontaneously that when you take a drink of water, everyone who's thirsty feels satiated?
It could mean that. It could. Or it could mean that you no longer experience thirst. You only have the capability of experiencing the thirst of others, and you no longer have a requirement for water. But there is a possibility that you may have a consciousness of other beings in your universe who still experience thirst. And so, you means seeing to their thirst. That's your requirement. Your need is no longer water for me. Your need is water for them, for example. And like that, and so on and so on and so on, right? it's a beautiful idea, right? It's a beautiful idea, isn't it? It's really stunning. So that was the meditation that we did, which we won't do, as I say, but anyway, we could get it for you. So please make sure that we have your email address so that we can communicate those kinds of things to you. Okay. All right. I wanted to get right to some meditations on the chakras, and first one we're going to do is a meditation on the Muladhara chakra. And in order to have an experience of Muladhara chakra, I'm going to show you three different things, three different practices. So be very comfortable. Yep, Sukhasana is good. And then, first thing I'd like you to do, if you wear glasses, you could take them off, and then bring your forefinger about, I don't know, a foot in front of your nose, and then bring the point of your forefinger in towards the tip of your nose, and then look right there at the tip of your nose, and then you can take your finger away and just keep a soft and gentle focus right there. You want to be able to see an inverted V, not a W. So this may mean that you have to be very relaxed with your eyes and allow them to settle right there. And then just let that go and relax your eyes. Close them for a few seconds. And then the next thing I'd like you to try is have an awareness of a point a couple of inches into the vagina. It's against the posterior wall of the vagina, at the back, in other words, just inside the cervix, on the posterior wall of the cervix, towards the back of the body, and very gently start to pulse there. So it's as though you were doing very, very gentle, subtle vaginal contractions. Very soft, though, very gentle. Sort of like pulses. And then release that, let that go. And then now relax even more. And then when you think you've completely let that go, relax even more. Then open your eyes again and do the same thing with your forefinger. And this time, as you bring your forefinger in towards the tip of your nose, and as you softly focus on the tip of your nose, do you have some awareness of how that process of focusing at the tip of the nose facilitates the consciousness of this point just inside the cervix that I've been talking about? Can you feel some kind of a heightened awareness, as though it heightens the sensation just inside the cervix there? Just by bringing your attention to the tip of your nose. It's like a very gentle suctioning. Can you feel it? It's very subtle, but it's like a suctioning of energy in towards that point. Try it a few times and see if you can feel it. And if you practice a few times and you start to feel it and you think, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about, then you are very close to pinpointing Muladhara chakra. Muladhara chakra. And then as you pulse it, the awareness of it increases and intensifies a little bit, possibly. So do the nose tip focus. It's called Nasikagra Drishti. Nasikagra Drishti. do that as often as you need to. Maybe you don't need to use your fingertip anymore, and you can just bring the focus to the tip of the nose, which automatically has this very subtle suctioning effect at the Muladhara chakra. So allow yourself to experience that a little bit here for a minute or two. And when you feel like you've got a very good, strong consciousness, a very good awareness of that Muladhara chakra, then you can start to pulse it. It's rhythmic and very slow, very slow. Like, well, you could say like elevator doors closing, maybe. And the important thing is to release. Release very slowly and engage very slowly. So both is very slow, equally slow. The releasing is just as important as the engaging. Nice. So is everybody okay with that? Yeah? Some awareness of that. So that's when you sustain that engagement, that's mula bandha. When you sustain that engagement, that's called mula bandha. And in the Satyananda school, which the Bihar School of Yoga is founded by Swami Satyananda, so it's called the Satyananda system. In that system, what we've just done is Mula Bandha, Muladhara Chakra and Mula Bandha. However, I did one of my yoga teacher trainings at the Salt Spring Center of Yoga on Salt Spring Island, and that school was founded by Baba Hari Das, another Indian yogi, and at that school, Ashwini Mudra is Mula Bandha. We're going to do Ashwini Mudra now. Some people have learned Ashwini Mudra as Mula Bandha. So we'll experience that, Ashwini Mudra, and then we'll talk a little bit about why different people are doing different things. So close your eyes again, and this time, imagine that you have to pass gas, and do what you do in order to keep from passing gas. You know, you can imagine you're in a crowded elevator, and it's absolutely essential that you don't pass gas. And you just do what you do. It's this engagement of the anal sphincters, right? And then let that go. Good. And do it a few times. Engage the anal sphincters and release. And please be very aware that the release is a true release. Be sure that you totally let go of the engagement of the energy in that area. Rhythmic contractions of the anal sphincters. Ashwini Mudra. Easy to remember. Ashwini Mudra. It means horse gesture. You can see why, right? Horse gesture. They do it really well, horses. So now let that go completely. Then make a super concentrated effort to release everything in the entire pelvic floor area. Totally relax. And when you think you have, relax more. And more. Good. Now, return to the Muladhara chakra. Do it very slowly. Maybe you'll use your nose tip gazing to bring you to that point, or maybe you are very clear about it. Your neural pathway is very clear to that Muladhara chakra, whatever you like. Find Muladhara chakra a couple of times, couple of pulses, and release. And now go back to Ashwini Mudra. A couple of pulses, Ashwini Mudra, and release. And go back and forth slowly a few times to see whether you're very clear about the difference. And then relax completely, totally relax. Consciously relax both Mula Bandha and Ashwini Mudra. So it's as though you're widening and broadening and lengthening the pelvic floor when you totally release, right? Now we're going to do what's called, for women, it's called Sahajoli Mudra. Sahajoli Mudra. In men, we call it Vajrali Mudra. Vajrali Mudra. So I'll tell you first for women, it's the urethral sphincter. So this is the thing that you do when you're trying to stop urine mid-flow. So that may be something you've actually tried to do or not. If you've never actually tried to do it, you might like to give that a try. But please don't do it as an exercise. So please don't stop and start urine in mid-flow as an exercise. Just try it once or twice so that you're clear in your mind what kind of action it is that allows you to stop urine mid-flow. And whatever you think that might be, whatever kind of message your central nervous system is sending to the appropriate muscles, do that now. Sahajoli Mudra. So maybe you can feel that we're talking about 3 different areas of the pelvic floor, right? Muladhara chakra, Mula Bandha, is in the central, the vaginal area of the pelvic floor. Ashwini Mudra is in the posterior area of the pelvic floor. And Sahajoli Mudra is the anterior, the front part of the pelvic floor. So very, very subtly, very softly engage the urethral sphincters and release, and engage and release, and engage and release. And then completely relax. Totally, totally let go. Take a few seconds to completely release. And then do all 3 of them. Mula Bandha, Ashwini Mudra, Sahajoli Mudra. Be sure to do it slowly and to release each one completely before you move on to the next. and then let everything go. Take a minute to do this. Keep letting go. And you think, okay, I've let go. And then do it again. Let go some more. And then let go more. So these two mudras in this bandha, Mula Bandha, Sahajoli Mudra, Ashvini Mudra, in this lower, we call these the lower gates of the body, right? The gates of the body are the two eyes, the two nostrils, the two ears, the mouth, and then in women, the three lower gates. Men have two lower gates. By the way, that Sahajoli Mudra in men, it's called Vajroli Mudra, and it is between the anus and the testicles in the pelvic floor and into the body, inside the body, like some distance into the body, depends on the size. But if you're teaching men in a class or something like that, you need to know. And some cues, which I've learned over the years from different people, which have been very effective, according to my husband, for activating this Mula Bandha in men, is, for example, walking into an icy cold lake. If you tell a man, imagine you're walking into an icy cold lake, they immediately do something which retracts that area of the pelvic floor. And men who have done a lot of martial arts, I don't know if you knew this, but they have a practice where they actually retract their testicles into the body. Did you know that? Don't you do martial arts? No. Okay. Anyone?
Yeah.
Yeah. We talked about that, right?
My son's a black belt in Taekwondo.
Right. And can he do that? Do they do that?
I know about that. I don't remember having that conversation.
Yeah, I can understand that. Anyway, it's that. That's the movement, which is called Vajroli Mudra in males. And it's the same, it has the same effect. So these three lower gates and the consciousness and the awareness of those mudras and bandhas raises a lot of heat energy. Like maybe you've noticed that. This raises a lot of fire element in the lower part of the body, right? And that's because your consciousness is directed there, and therefore all of your prana is going there, right? And therefore the blood flow and everything is going there. Everything just is getting concentrated there. It's a very interesting thing that in many ashram settings, like for example, at the ashram on Salt Spring Center, they teach Ashvini Mudra as Mula Bandha. Ashvini Mudra is the anal sphincter. They teach that as Mula Bandha. In Tibetan monasteries, and I know this from my training in Tibetan Buddhism, when they teach this chakra system, which is considered a very highly secret practice in the monastery, they teach raising of the energies in the way that we're talking about right now, starting about 4 finger widths below the navel, which is actually Svadhisthana chakra, and Manipura chakra, which is at the navel in behind. But they do not, rarely, in fact I can't even really think of a time that they teach these lower gates as being that low in the body. And my theory, this is my theory, is that because it's an ashram setting and ashrams are teaching a practice which includes the practice of celibacy for the express purpose of using that sexual type of energy for a different purpose, raising that type of energy, right? Instead of ejecting it, as you normally might as a householder. You might, if you raised energies like that and you were in a partnership, you would engage in some sort of lovemaking activity and the prana would go out of the body. So that's not the point of these practices in spiritual practice, right? So the point is to bring those powerful, powerful, powerful energies up into the central channel. Because those are, that heat, that fire energy, and that pranic energy is super powerful. And that it's very effective in terms of drawing it into the central channel and then raising the consciousness and the chandali. But in the monasteries, they don't teach the mudras and the bandhas that way. They teach them much higher up because, my theory is, when you've got 1,500 monks in a setting like that, it's not a good idea to start raising their lower energies, all at once, And so that's my theory, and it's a very interesting thing. I've mentioned that particular theory to some people, and they think that probably it's true. And in the ashrams where they teach Ashvini Mudra as Mula Bandha, there's a reason for everything, right? And anytime you hear, oh, no, I learned it this way, like I learned Mula Bandha as being this way, someplace else in the body, some other kind of a method. There's no right or wrong with this. There have been as many methods taught as there are students, and teachers teaching them. And I heard Swami Muktibuddhananda say one thing to me about, for example, Shanka Prakshalana practice, and she said something completely different to the rest of the room. And of course, she's right on both counts. She was absolutely telling me for me, and then telling the room as a whole, 27 people in the room, something different, and that's perfect. So, just to avoid any kind of judgment about certain different schools that may teach things in different ways, there's a very good reason why that's the case. The only thing that's missing is that we don't know all the different reasons why people teach things the way that they do, and just to be very aware not to pass judgment on any teacher or practice.
Yeah, so Langara teaches Ashvini.
Yeah, I know they do.
Well, yeah.
That's because that's a Baba Haridas based lineage, right?
Ah, okay. So the other thought that I just had when you were saying that is that maybe there should be a different male and female practice. Maybe that would make a difference too. Maybe us women are not so.
Maybe.
With our minds there
Maybe.
as well, we don't have that trouble. Especially as everybody's getting older, that's why it takes so long to get to enlightenment. So by the time you're 80, you want sex anyway, so it's okay.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Try it out. Check it out. So, okay. So those are the three lower gates, and so this is important. I think we'll stand up for a second and maybe have some water and have a little bit of a shake before I tell you the important thing.
Can I ask you, would you recommend doing all three of them or choose one?
Different practices have different applications. So in a second, we'll go on to a little bit more of that, when you might use what. Yeah. So just have a bit of a stretch, whatever you feel like you need, water or... Who brought these beautiful tomatoes here, please? Yes, thank you so much. I'd like to pass them around. Yes, I figured they were. These things taste like candy, right? So
I was eyeing it. I thought it was strawberries.
I bet you were. Get one, Lord?
Yes, I did. Just coming back for more. No, just kidding. Just checking the video.
So the other thing with these practices is your bladder has to be empty. And actually so do your bowels. So the best time to do these practices is first thing in the morning before breakfast, hopefully after a bowel movement. But if you have to empty your bladder, please do. Okay, so that's good. Just get the blood flowing a little bit. And then when you're ready, come on back. Sevi, are you going to Mariska's ACI classes?
Well, I just got, I think she's starting today? No? Yesterday.
Are you, Leonard?
No,
I'm not, but I'd like
now
to come.
working.
Oh, yeah.
Back.
So you are. What a rude shock.
It is. It is.
Right.
But it's good.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm planning to.
Are you?
Yes, well, we just changed our mind to homeschool my son. So kind of this kind of bounced a little bit back with the school starting. So
Yes.
I actually had the email ready today.
Yeah.
And I thought it was today actually, and I just mentioned to my son, I was like, oh, I really want to go to this ACI, but I have to go to workshop. So good that you pointed out because I thought it was today actually at 12:30.
It's Friday. Friday.
Which worked really good for me. Yeah. I was just thinking I'll just do the first class and then I'll attend the second one.
Okay. Okay, so Mula Bandha is the practice of Muladhara Chakra. Mula Bandha, the middle, the vaginal muscle one. That's a practice of Muladhara Chakra. Ashwini Mudra and Sahajoli Mudra, Ashwini, the anal sphincters, Sahajoli, the urethral sphincters, are practices of Svadhisthana Chakra. Svadhisthana Chakra, which is the next one up. Uddiyana Bandha is a practice of Manipura Chakra. And then Jalandhara Bandha, we're going to do Ujjayi breathing. And lots of different things are practices for Vishuddhi Chakra, the throat chakra. Today we'll do Ujjayi. So we're going to do Uddiyana Bandha and some preliminary practices of Uddiyana Bandha as practices for Manipura Chakra, and Sahajoli Mudra, Ashwini Mudra practices for Svadhisthana Chakra. Now we're going to go back into a little meditation pinpointing Svadhisthana Chakra. Okay? So in order to find, and by the way, all of the chakras except Mula Dhara Chakra and Sahasrara Chakra have what are called kshetram points. Kshetram points means there's a corresponding point on the front of the body. The chakras are just in front of the spine, of the backbone, in the back body. And then the kshetram points are in the front of the body. Farah, please could you pass me that for a second? I just show you what I mean by virtue of the diagram here. Let's see if there are any kshetrams. Maybe not. Okay, 1 second. Just a minute, I will show you. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I don't. Anyway, if I stand sideways, I can show you that Svadhisthana chakra is, and you can feel this too, is the base of your tailbone. You can lean forward a little bit and find the very tip of your tailbone, your coccyx. And then when you find the very tip of the coccyx, you move your finger up. You've got to get the seam of your pants out of the way. Move your finger up along the coccyx to a little flat bit. It's more up towards the sacrum. And then there's a little wee indentation, little tiny indentation. And when you find it, you kind of go, sort of like a hot spot, you know. Probably get Wi-Fi there. It is. It's like a little hot spot. So try again if you're not feeling that anything like that. So you can do it standing or seated is okay too. I'm showing you this way so I can show you the kshetrams.
So the video's right
Doesn't
there.
matter.
Sorry, I just turned
That's
on my
okay.
camera.
So the tip of the tailbone, the coccyx, stand up straight, move your finger up along that bony ridge towards the flatter,
crack.
it flattens out, it's above the crack, and then the sacrum, it starts to flatten out a little, and then there's a little wee indentation right there, just in front of there is Svadhisthana chakra. Svadhisthana chakra. And at the front location, the kshetram location, you want to put your fingers on the pubic bone, the actual ridge, and then take your fingers down, 2 fingers maybe would be better, right down on the edge. You know, there's like a corner, right? An edge to the pubic bone, and then your 2 fingers will be sitting like directly, practically on top of the clitoris. That's the kshetram. So here it is. The kshetram location of Svadhisthana chakra and the actual Svadhisthana chakra in the Sushumna channels back here. So that's the kshetram of Svadhisthana chakra. Manipura chakra, you take your take 2 fingers inside your navel like this, and then just walk your fingers directly to the back body. And right there is Manipura chakra. Now with Manipura chakra is a little difficult to landmark. And the problem with it, with landmarking it, is that we don't always sit up perfectly straight, especially in a seated meditation type position. There's a tendency to very subtly slump, but it can be so subtle. And if you keep your finger there where your fingers ended up, walking behind from the navel, and you even just tiny bit flex forward, notice that you feel those bumpy protuberances of the vertebrae. You shouldn't feel that. So go back to an upright position where those bony protuberances recede back in. Okay? And that's Manipura chakra. As soon as you feel a bony protuberance, you can't actually, you're not on the chakra anymore. So that's Manipura chakra. Try again. Again, it should feel like a little hot, like a little hot spot. There should be like a awareness of it, right? And it takes time. It took me a long, long time to find and sustain Manipura chakra. And I had I had years of deep retreat to play with it. So it's not so easy, but anyway, that's where it is. That's Manipura chakra. And then Vishuddhi chakra it's actually the place where we swallow. If you swallow, you know that consciousness at the back of the throat, that is Vishuddhi chakra. So it's up from the pit, and it depends on the person, but it's somewhere around here, kind of, in the back body, right? In the back body. So if you put your finger approximately somewhere there at the front, and then think, okay, directly behind there, and then swallow, you'll have an awareness of it. So the chakra location at the back again, and the kshetram location at the front here. And then the kshetram location of the Manipura chakra is the actual navel on the front body. So you can imagine like a line going from Svadhisthana kshetram up to Manipura kshetram, Anahata kshetram, heart chakra kshetram is right here between the two nipples approximately, and then the line extends up to the throat chakra, right? And then from there, it goes to the back of the head at a point called Bindu Visarga. Bindu Visarga. And that's where, if you run your finger along your skull and you find a corner, an edge, do you feel that corner? Like there's an edge up here. Yeah? Just below there, there's another hot spot. And that's called Bindu Visarga. And then, as you know, Sahasrara chakra is a little tiny tender spot at the crown of the head. Easiest way to locate that tiny tender spot is in headstand. So if you think about doing headstand and you think about reducing the weight that you have through your arms if you do headstand, and even if you don't, because you could be in downward dog and find this, and you just allow your weight to go into the crown of the head, there's like a little tender spot, right? Where your head will come to balance, and that's the Sahasrara chakra. So that's kind of like a quickie look, but we're going to go more in depth. Right now we're going to go more in depth to Svadhisthana chakra and Manipura chakra and then Vishuddhi, because those are the three which are concerned with these bandhas, right? The three bandhas. So the kshetram again is along the front of the body, and it loops back and then comes down the Sushumna Nadi at the back. And it's kind of like a loop, like this. Kshetram, Sushumna, Kshetram, Sushumna. Okay? All right. So back to your seated position. And then in seated this time, see if you can locate that Svadhisthana chakra in this position. So you will need to bend forward a little, find your coccyx again, and then run your finger up along the bone to the flat part of the sacrum, and then sit up very tall. Make sure you have some support under your sitting bones so that you don't slump. If you need support under your sitting bones, most of us do. And then, then you can maybe find that little hot spot there. Keep your finger on it when you find that flat bit. Can everybody find a little flat bit? Yeah, I know. Yeah. You know, it really is on the sacrum. It's not like low. You know what I mean? Yes, it's just, I think it's just above the crack of the anus, just above, I would say. Yes, it is. So keep your finger there, and then bring yourself back to upright position. Close your eyes. Draw your awareness to that point where your finger is pressing. And then you could press a little harder now. keep your awareness focused on the sensation more than the location. And then push even harder. And focus on the sensation. Stay very, very, very focused on this sensation as you push. Then release the push, release your fingers. See if you can keep the sensation with your mind. And now release your mind. Keep your eyes closed. And engage Sahajali Mudra, the urethral sphincters, and see whether you can experience a sort of like a reverberation from Sahajali Mudra to Svadhisthana chakra. Like a reciprocal energy. See if you can recreate the sensation almost using the Sahajali Mudra. And relax, Sahajali Mudra. Now, Ashwini Mudra, the anal sphincters. See if you can recreate that sensation using your Ashwini Mudra. So, give some awareness to totally relaxing these areas. And then you open your eyes gently. So maybe you still have sort of a after, it's not an after image, but an after, huh? Afterglow. That's nice. An afterglow at the Svadhisthana area. Even now, there's sort of like this afterglow, exactly. Great word. Thank you. Svadhisthana chakra, very, very powerful chakra. So, Ashwini Mudra and Sahajali Mudra are directly affecting Svadhisthana chakra energy. And You know, the thing with the chakras is that somehow there's this weird connotation that we seem to have, that the chakras are some, you know, they're beautiful and colorful, and everybody's painting them, and this is all, it's okay, it's true. There are colors which are associated with the chakras, and sounds which are associated with the chakras, as well as sensations, which is what we're talking about here today. That's kind of like my main preferred practice is the sensation practice. That's why you won't hear me talking a lot about, you know, what kind of a flower it looks like and how many petals it has and what color it is and what kind of a sound it's making, although that's very interesting work too. But it's a whole different sense perception workshop. You know what I mean? So I'm concentrating on sensation, which is the practice of hatha primarily. And if you're that way inclined, then it, you know, it might work for you, but you might be inclined towards very powerful visualization, for example, in which case, you know, that kind of stuff might work for you too, right? So you can pursue those other ways of locating and raising the awareness of your chakras. But what I was going to say is that the chakras, in fact, are choke points of Sushumna Nadi. So they are things that we're working to release and get rid of. Like, it's not that we're glorifying them, you know. We're trying to release the choking. So Ida and Pingala nadis wrap around Sushumna all the way up central channel. And at the heart chakra, they wrap 3 times. And that is the reason that the heart chakra is the hardest chakra to open, you know. And what does that mean, open? What it means is for the prana, Kundalini Shakti, to get up past the heart chakra to Sahasrara. It has to go past the heart chakra, through the heart chakra and past it. And this is the hardest chakra to open. And that, I think, makes sense. To me, it makes sense, right? This is like the place where we hold our fear, you know, and our resistance. This is all held here. So the ultimate final type of fear, to love and to completely forgive and to be completely present and vulnerable and available, you know, in this world. This is what happens from opening of the heart chakra. And mostly it seems like it's a karma of human beings to have 3 knots at the heart chakra. You know, this resistance to that process, right? So this is a very difficult chakra to get the knots out of it. Muladhara, you can feel, right? Muladhara is relatively easy to sense, to have sensation there. And Svadhisthana is relatively easy. And maybe you found Manipura relatively easy. It's not. Generally, it's a little harder. And then as you go up, you know, it gets a little harder. Vishuddhi is, I find it's relatively easy too. But so let's work on Manipura now and see what happens with Manipura. Let's do a couple of twists, because twists are very helpful for also helpful for Manipura chakra, for opening up the knots, untying the knots at Manipura chakra. And then, you know, once you have an awareness of this Manipura chakra, you'll have a new idea of what it means when the yoga teacher says, when you're doing a twist, the yoga teacher says, lead the twist from your belly, from your navel. You know what I mean? And, you know, they're always cueing you not to lead the twist from your head, or, you know, or even your shoulders, but from your belly, right? You'll have a new awareness of that. So it's very helpful to do a few twists like that, to awaken that Manipura chakra.
When we are squeezing the needle sphincter, the other sphincter, are we pulsating it or just squeezing?
In what context?
When you said to engage the
Mula Bandha?
what?
Mula Bandha?
Yeah.
Oh, when we just did this?
Yeah.
Oh, no. So pulsing gets you to the correct place.
okay.
you know, where the actual chakra is, or in the case of Sahajoli Mudra, where is that concentration of prana supposed to be? It's a seal, you know, it's meant to be
Yeah.
a seal, right?
Yeah.
And the pulsing is the practice
Oh, okay.
to allow you to get to do the seal.
Okay.
So the pulsing and the, you know, these sorts of movements are exercises, you can say.
Oh,
They're
okay. I
exercises.
don't want to do that. I just want to close it.
Yeah, ultimately.
Okay.
Ultimately, you just want to be able to find, you know,
Yeah.
and activate the mudra or the mula bandha or whatever it is, right? So, and by the way, while we're on the subject of application, somebody was asking about how, you know, when and how do we use these, right? We use them in different contexts. We use them in asana practice. We use them in pranayama practice. We use them in other practices. So, Mula Bandha, I think, is fairly well known in terms of, you know, when might you use Mula Bandha, right? Mula Bandha is very useful in standing balance, single leg standing. In hand balance, it's critical to be able to activate the bandha, and that's how it is that women can do ridiculously difficult hand balance, you know, really, 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 like women who have no muscle mass virtually and stuff like that, because it has nothing to do with muscles. You know, it's something that you do by virtue of the bandhas, right? In an asana context, Ashwini Mudra, you might not have been aware of this, but we'll try this later. Ashwini Mudra we use in inversions a lot, like shoulder stand and head stand and hand stand and forearm stand. Yeah, it's really cool. Ashwini Mudra. In combination, you see, there's a tendency, it does depend actually on the postural habit of the person. But if you have, you know, and it sort of depends when you're doing headstand or handstand or those types of asana, whether your tendency is to fall into a back bend or not, or fall the other way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a tendency to fall into a back bend, you might activate Sahajali Mudra to concentrate the pranic energy in the front and keep you from going into a back bend, right? In shoulder stand, for example, there's a tendency to go into a flexion position. Do you know what I mean? Whereas you want to be very straight in the torso. And that's not easy in shoulder stand, if you can imagine, right? So that you can get by doing, anyway, we'll try it by doing Ashwini Mudra. Jalandhara Bandha is also very common, right? Jalandhara Bandha is cued. Jalandhara Bandha and Mula Bandha, you may hear cued in asana classes more. Probably Ashwini Mudra you may not ever have heard cued in an asana class. That takes a little bit of workshopping, you know, to use those kinds of cues in an asana class. So Jalandhara Bandha, of course, shoulder stand is it's a very powerful, strong, sort of almost a manually applied Jalandhara Bandha. You know, it's like right? It locks off the throat chakra. Other subtler forms of Jalandhara Bandha in asana practice, for example, in plank pose, so that your skull, your head is in line with your spine and you're not dropping the head. Teacher will often cue you, bring your head up in line with your spine. We'll do this later too. I'm just throwing out some applications, some uses. In pranayama practice, we use all three bandhas as retention, as a way to do retention. So it's not like you take a breath and then in your mind you think. It's not like that. It's like you take a breath or you exhale a breath. Works both ways, but let's talk about inhale. It's like you inhale a breath and then you very subtly apply the bandhas from both ends. And that's the retention. That's the retention. And probably you noticed from the retreat when we were doing Mahamudra, nobody said anything about holding your breath, right? She never said do an inhalation retention, right? You never even probably heard her use that word retention. But there we all were doing completely spontaneous retentions because all she said was activate your bandhas. And when you activate the bandhas, it's like that thing we did. Listen. It's the same thing. You apply the bandhas, and what that does is it's a retention. It's just a spontaneous retention. So that's how we use the bandhas in pranayama practice. Then, beyond pranayama practice, in a state of meditation, then there are other very, very advanced practices that we can do, that we can move into, which you do, and there's no visible anything going on. And it's not like you're going, and you're not even like doing anything like this at the lower gates. It's almost like it's a psychic lock, a psychic bandha, and the psychic bandha is regulating the pranic intake outflow in meditation practice. And then so eventually what's happening is that by virtue of that process, kriyas, you maybe learn the kriyas through the Paramahansa Yogananda lineage, then what you're doing is you're just using the bandhas almost, well, in fact, psychically, to come into a kevala kumbhaka, spontaneous breath retention, which, as it becomes longer and longer and longer and longer and longer, at some point that is the door into a state of samadhi. So there's this process of very gross engagement of the bandhas and the mudras to a little bit more subtle through the pranayama practices, a little bit more subtle in the mudra bandha practices, and then super, super subtle. Then it's completely psychic, Only with your mind you're applying the bandhas. And you already did that, right? How did you make out with holding the sensation at the Svadhisthana chakra with your mind, only with your mind? Keep the sensation. Okay, we're going to do that again now with Manipura chakra. Okay, so again, if you've got to empty your bladder, this is the time. Just take a tiny break here while we do that. So, have you ladies seen this book, or yeah, have you? Did you have a look at it?
I
Linda?
did.
Okay. Have you seen this book? This is the Swami with whom we did the retreats last week. Do we have them in the Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was Leonardo's.
Oh,
Okay, so here we go. Manipura chakra.
can you say that again?
Manipura chakra. Manipura chakra. Okay. So Manipura chakra, very, very important with the posture, right? So in this position, Roger, my husband, and I, in deep retreat, what we really noticed was it just takes a hair off perfect neutral spine, just a hair, and you lose Manipura chakra. So I'll show you what I mean. So once again, fingers in the navel, and then as tall as you can, walk your fingers around to the back. It's best on bare skin, by the way. And then put your thumb on that spot on your spine. And it is a spot where if you bend forward even a little, there's a knot. You'll notice the vertebra pokes out. So you don't want to feel that poking vertebra at all. And then sit up tall until it recedes back in, and keep your thumb there, and push hard. And then can close your eyes and just keep pushing. Notice how upright you have to be, and how even the subtlest slump And you not only you lose, you get the bony protuberance, but you lose this sensation. See if you can find, by pushing a little harder maybe, the sensitivity of the chakra point. It has that same live wire kind of a thing that goes on with it. That same hot spot. You can intensify your awareness by pushing harder. And lock your mind right now, lock your mind onto the sensation as you push harder. And even a little harder. And maybe even a little harder. Release your thumb. Keep your mind locked on the sensation. Keep your mind locked on the sensation. And release your mind. See if you can bring it back now. And release your mind again from the sensation. And then bring it back. And release. And then just let go, let it go, let it recede, let it recede. It's very, very good to do these kinds of exercises with your mind. You can do it with like taste, like aftertaste, as well as afterglow. And for example, in Trataka practice, we do it with after image, right? So you can do it with all your senses like that.
What do you mean after taste?
Well,
After you eat something?
yeah, let's try it.
Oh.
Or just to maintain the memory of it.
Oh.
And just
Different
hold
stuff.
it with your mind.
Okay.
You hold it with your mind, just like you did that Manipura chakra sensation, right? How did you do with that? with
so hot.
Yeah, no, Manipura really raises heat. You know, the lower chakras all do, and some you will resonate with more powerfully than others. You know, like some people will get that like super heat from Svadhisthana, and other people from Manipura. So, let's do a taste one, and then it's good if you keep your take it into your mouth, and then close your eyes and go back to a very still position, and eat it very, very slowly and be very, lock your mind onto the taste. Or the sensation too, right? It's a sensation thing as well. Thank you so much, Mariska. This is
Yeah,
very
I'm just happy to get another tomato.
Okay. Aren't they amazing? And this is a really good thing to use because it's got such an intense.
So, a chakra of meditation releases the choke points in those lower.
Eventually. It's not that the meditation releases the choke points, it's that the
subtle.
prana that you are, when you do that, what's happening is you're drawing prana into the central channel. That's what you're doing. And enough prana with enough stillness on the exact point will eventually
Okay.
bring the prana into the central channel completely. That is the point of the practice, right? Yeah. Good. So it's a very powerful practice to do that with all of your senses, and then it gives you a sense of that. Like, what is it really to have a sense perception? What is it really, right? I mean, when you sit there and you do something like that, and you move back and forth between, say, two senses, recreating the sensation or the taste or whatever it is, and you're doing it with your mind, the thing is long gone. And then maybe you have some inkling of that, we are experiencing ourselves as being limited. I mean, if you can do that, then you just have to extrapolate a little bit, right, as to what else you might be able to do with your mind, right? It's just a ripple from there. It's just a ripple out. If I can do that, then maybe I can maybe I can do a chakra meditation and bring back whatever 5 sense perceptions, all 5 sense perceptions by virtue of the fact that I practiced with a tomato. I practiced staring at a candle flame, I can still see that after image very clearly, long after I've closed my eyes, I can still feel my thumb on my svadhisthana. I can feel it right now when I think about it. You know what I mean? So it's a really good idea to meditate like that, because it's like that macro microcosmos thing, It just gives you an idea of the limitlessness and the whatever the percentage is. What does she say? The percentage of the brain that we don't use. 90% or something of our brain that we don't use, You just get like a little taste of what that is. There's your tomato there, Florianola. We just did a taste, holding the taste with your mind exercise, which you can do. So we're going to do practices for each of the chakras now. Actually, we did practice for Muladhara chakra, which is the Mula Bandha. And the Mula Bandha, okay, so just to review then, the really, for me anyway, there are many, many, many different practices, by the way, for each of the chakras. And that is the topic of next year's retreat with Swami Muktibuddhananda. Chakra sadhana, it's called. And when we did retreat, we spent 1 month on each chakra, just doing practice at each chakra, 1 month each. Actually longer, because we did it over a year. So for 1 year, we did not even Sahasrara, just up to Vishuddhi and Bindu Visarga, 1 year. So that was fun. That was really cool. Next summer, we're going to do a day on each chakra with Swami Muktibuddhananda. And that will be good too, because then you'll learn the exact techniques and then you'll be able to spend the next year doing that. So the Muladhara chakra, those exercises that we did. Actually, one of the most important things about Muladhara chakra is understanding how to isolate Mula Bandha. Isolating Mula Bandha from Sahajali Vajrali Mudra and Ashwini Mudra is very important. Becomes very important in the end. It doesn't seem like, why is it such a big deal? But it is. It's a big deal. And so there are applications for Vajrali Sahajali that Ashwini Mudra won't do it for you. And the reverse is also true. So the most important thing with the Muladhara chakra is that you're able to isolate it. And that the practice for that, Mula Bandha, is a Mula Bandha isolation. And if it's an Ashwini Mudra isolation, then that it's an Ashwini Mudra isolation. The point is there are 3 different, very, very distinct and different energies for the 3 lower gates. And so in your own mind, your reproducibility of those sensations at each location are important. So that's the most important thing. And the other thing that I find very helpful is this Nasikagra Drishti thing for pinpointing onto Muladhara chakra, okay?
What about just
Nasikagra. Huh?
So what about just engaging them all so that you'd be covered?
It's good. It's fine. And for this particular application, and generally speaking, it's great. Yeah, it is. It's great. But like I said before, and it can be something like you're trying to do, I don't know, a balance pose, right? And if your tendency is to fall over one way or the other, then you can notice how that activating the different energy makes the difference for you, right? So Nasikagra Drishti, try it one more time. Notice now that you have this a bit of a heightened sensitivity. Notice now if it works better maybe to find Muladhara chakra. Can you feel it suctioning onto that particular chakra? It's almost like it chakra is starting to throb a little just from doing this particular drishti. Yeah? Okay. So then it's important for me now to say you can overdo these practices. You can. Given enough time, you can overdo them. If you overdo, for example, Ashwini Mudra, it can cause severe constipation. If you overdo Mula Bandha, Muladhara chakra practices, you can get some very weird situations. Like what? Like, especially if you're confusing the mudras down there, like if too much sahajali, you get weird bladder issues. Like you start to mess with the natural sphincter system of the bladder and also the natural sphincter peristalsis system of the anus, the rectum. So judiciously apply bandha practice, not to overdo bandha practices. You don't have to do a lot. A little is a lot, right? And I know my teachers say, as soon as you have awareness of the bandhas and the chakra points, that's all. It's enough. Then every once in a while you do it just to see if you still remember, which you will. Which you will. After a certain amount of practice, you'll be able to pinpoint the chakras just like that, Like probably now you'll be able to do it just with Nasikagra Drishti. So it's not like you need to do them all the time, like forever, at all. Not at all. The point is simply to maintain this heightened awareness and sensitivity of them. Okay, so practices for Svadhisthana chakra. Let's see. Let's just go, actually, let's have a look in. Everybody could have a look in their little booklet thing. You need a book?
I looked at the home.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Absolutely. Hi.
I'll return it.
So if you have a look at the Bandhas page, up the top there, outer body, right? Maybe some of you know, doesn't really matter, but the corresponding gross body, physical body points to Vishuddhi chakra, deep neck flexors and what's called the hyoid bone, which is a floating bone. And maybe some of you have heard this word epiglottis. Epiglottis is this little flap at the back of the throat. And that's where Vishuddhi chakra is. And that's where the air passes when we do Ujjayi breathing, which we're going to do next, because we're moving on to Jalandhara Bandha. And then creating a vacuum, the second one, creating a vacuum in the intra-abdominal area is the practice of Uddiyana Bandha. Uddiyana Bandha. We're going to do that too, of course. We haven't done it yet. And then pelvic floor transversus abdominis multifidus. If you know of these muscles, great. If not, not to worry. It doesn't matter. I don't want to take you out to the gross body. If you know of them, it's just a way to understand, oh, okay, there's a corresponding something going on in the gross body. And then the inner body, let's go to, so we did Mula Bandha, right? We did Mula Bandha. And generally speaking, with Mula Bandha, they're done on both an inhalation and an exhalation retention. Mula Bandha can be done on both an inhalation retention and an exhalation retention. Okay? And we'll practice it in just a moment on both phases of breath. Uddiyana Bandha is only done on an exhalation retention. You cannot do Uddiyana Bandha on an inhalation retention. So, for example, in asana practice, when do you normally do an exhale? Forward folds, right? Forward folds is when we generally. So all the forward folds, as your asana practice advances, you might notice that you spontaneously go into an Uddiyana Bandha. downward dog is a very good example. So as you come into downward dog, did you see what I did? Oh, you can't see? I have to bear more of my belly. Okay, exhale. Right? And as you come out of that bandha, you come into a natural inhalation. So that, you one day, if you haven't noticed it yet, one day in your asana practice, as your practice becomes mindful, I would say, if you do it like an Ashtanga, Shri Patabi Joy Ashtanga type practice, right? That kind of practice is like a purification practice. It's a purification practice. It's designed to heat you up and melt your mucus and increase your fire element, and clear your body of toxins and mucus. That's what that practice is designed to do, and it does it super effectively, right? It's fast, it's furious, you sweat like crazy, right? And then as the practice becomes a little subtler, right, what will happen generally, that type of practice has its very, very important place. But you'll notice at a certain point that the mindfulness goes up, the speed goes down, the mindfulness goes up, and then you start to notice, oh, I'm in the spontaneous Uddiyana Bandha right now, in downward dog, or every time I go into a forward fold. Because a forward fold can only become deep when you have exhaled completely and you go into a spontaneous Uddiyana Bandha. Because otherwise there's too much tissue in the way and you can't actually do a forward fold, right? So, and these things can happen naturally, or you can do them consciously. Now you can do them consciously because I just brought it to your awareness, right? So, Uddiyana Bandha, most often always with exhalation retention, and very noticeable, consciously or unconsciously, that you activate them in forward fold positions. Uttanasana, Paschimottanasana, Janu Shirshasana, downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana, all of the forward fold positions. Including things like, for example, coming into Bakasana, certain very, very deep forward fold hand balances. You will notice, we'll try this, notice not only is it a Mula Bandha, it's a Mula Bandha for the lift, but it's a super, super deep Uddiyana Bandha to get the depth. So I don't know if you've ever noticed, if you've done a lot of hand balance practice, you might have noticed that hand balance becomes easier as your forward folds become deeper.
Mm.
Yeah? That is the
Slowly
case.
making the connection.
It is the case. So that's Uddiyana Bandha. Jalandhara Bandha you can do on an inhalation retention or an exhalation retention, either. Okay, let's move on to the breath now, and then we'll move on to the practices for Uddiyana and Jalandhara. So we're going to first of all do deep yogic breathing. Deep yogic breathing is nice to do in supine, but I won't take you into supine now because it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and we're not going to do Yoga Nidra today. Although I'm sorely tempted to do it. But you look very relaxed, which is really important for Bandha practice, to be very relaxed. That's the other thing I should tell you. Overdoing the mudras and the bandhas is very dangerous and not a good idea. But what's even worse is to approach any of these kinds of practices in a state of tension or anxiety. So if you're in a state of tension or anxiety and you start using your mind to hold on to these different sensations and things, it's not a good idea. Not a good idea. You will then give yourself a state of what's called pranavayu derangement, which has different manifestations, but it can be like headaches or tightness in the chest or anxiety or like shakiness, things like this. I don't know, you may have noticed sometimes from asana it happens. If you do asana practice with maybe incorrect motivation, or you're already in a state of anxiety or tension and you do some asana practice, which by the way is also a form of mudra. You know what I mean? Just by virtue of the asana itself, it's a form of locking. You know, you don't even have to know anything about mudras and bandhas. The asanas are designed also for that purpose of locking prana into certain places and manipulating the prana and redirecting the prana. So, again, very, very relaxed, and it's good to skip these things if you really are in a state of tension and just do it another day, is what I recommend. Okay, deep yogic breathing is where, if you look at that picture of that rib cage, right? The rib cage wants to go like this in a deep yogic breath, in all directions. In all directions equally. Typically, what happens in that I see a lot is the rib cage goes like this. So it looks like this. And it's a mouth breath. And all this stuff gets really tense. And the rib cage isn't expanding like this at all. And people are trying to get their collarbones off the rib cage and their head and face and skull and everything to try to get a deep breath. So the idea is to have the rib cage go like this. And what that requires is that the exhale is 100%. The exhale is 100%. Then the inhale is optimal, maximal and optimal. And the inhaled breath goes into the lowest lobe of the lung in gross anatomy language and expands the lung from the lowest part, which is what makes the rib cage go like this, down here. If you feel your rib cage, right, it goes quite low. Like the lowest rib is really not far from this hip bone. You know what I mean? It's very close. So it's way down, right? So way down there, even, the rib cage, if you wrap your fingers around your rib cage down that low, all the way down there, you want the rib cage to look kind of like this. Can you see my rib cage? Okay, so wrap your fingers around like this, and as you inhale, use your mind to send your rib cage out to the sides and into your thumbs and into your fingertips in all directions, expansive, big and expansive. Use your mind to push your hands out to the sides with your breath. Big, expansive opening of the rib cage. Yeah, that's nice, good. Good, okay, and then just release for a minute. Rest your hands for a second. So the deep yogic breath is where the lowest part of the rib cage, basically what happens, right, when we take a breath in, is that the diaphragm descends, and when the diaphragm descends, all of the organs get pushed, get displaced down, and so because of that, the belly has to expand because all the organs are getting pushed down by the diaphragm. So the first thing that happens is that the belly expands out because the stuff being pushed down, all your organs, stomach and everything being pushed down like that, so that the lungs can expand. The rib cage starts to expand out to the sides first. When I say out to the sides, I mean in all directions, okay? So to the front, to the sides, and to the back. Then, as the air fills the lungs, this upper part of the rib cage starts to expand out to the sides and up. So then at the very end of a deep yogic breath, it goes belly expands, rib cage starts to expand, higher and higher and higher, and finally at the very end it goes like this and lifts. The collarbones lift up to allow the final expansion of the rib cage beneath, and like that. So let's see, let's try one more time. So it kind of looks like this. Okay, so try that and just have a real awareness of that process. It's like a gradual process moving up the torso. Finally, only at the very end of that deep yogic breath is there any movement up here. And see if you can consciously restrict movement up here until the very last phase of your breath. Consciously not allow this part of your collarbones and your sternum to move at all. And then just take one break for a second. We're going to add ujjayi into that mix because it actually makes it a bit easier. So ujjayi breath, everybody familiar with ujjayi breath? So just to review, right? What you're doing is you're imagining as you inhale, exhale through your nose that you're saying, ah, but you're not opening your mouth and there's no sound coming out. But if you think, you're saying ah, but you're just not opening your mouth, basically, that's ujjayi breath. And see if you can experience that the air flutters past the epiglottis right there at the Vishuddhi chakra. So you can do it just a few times without holding onto your rib cage. And now that you've had a feel of your rib cage and you understand the deep yogic breath, maybe you'll just keep your hands on your knees in any mudra you like and just work on ujjayi for a few minutes. And ujjayi breath can also be very, very gross and audible and much subtler, right? So we'll start with a very audible, sort of like a gross form of ujjayi and sort of try to exaggerate it, okay? So that I can hear you, kind of thing. So keep your eyes closed, keep your Ujjayi breathing going, and see if you can imagine that this Ujjayi breath is almost like fanning the fire at that Vishuddhi chakra. Good. That's lovely. Okay, good. So release yourself from that. He's heating up. Okay. Then we'll do, I'm going to take you right into some Uddiyana Bandha practices. Practices for preparing to do Uddiyana Bandha. The first one is called Svana Pranayama, and it's kind of like a preliminary to Agnisar Dhoti. Who knows Agnisar Dhoti? Do you, Florina? Yeah. Do you ladies know Agnisar Dhoti? Is that?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, Agnisar Dhoti. I'm sure you learned it in YTT. Yeah. So this is the preliminary practice. Svana Pranayama is like it's like this. You can sit in this position if this is comfortable. It sort of lends itself to a nice Svana Pranayama practice, and all you do is you lean forward, you hang out your tongue like a puppy dog, and you pant. That's all. Good. And then after you do that for a while, keep going. And after you do that for a while, you just pay attention to what your navel is doing, your belly. Can you feel what your belly is doing? It's going.
Mouth is dry too. Mouth is dry too.
Mouth is dry too. Want some water?
Is this Kapalabhati?
No, it's not Kapalabhati.
Oh.
Kapalabhati is completely different. Kapalabhati is another day. So this is called Svana Pranayama, and it's a preparation for Agnisar Dhoti. Agnisar Dhoti is actually one of the Shatkarma. Interestingly, I mean, it is a Shatkarma in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. There are 6 cleansing or purification practices. They are Agnisar Dhoti, Basti, which is enema practice, and you can do that in a number of different ways, including what we did, Shankha Prakshalana, right? Shankha Prakshalana practice is a cleansing practice of the lower digestive passageways without going in through the rectum. So it's sort of a non-invasive form of clearing the lower rectal passages. So that's another Shatkarma. Agnisar Dhoti, Kapalabhati is a Shatkarma. You know, we think it's a pranayama, and it is. It's a form of pranayama, but it's also a Shatkarma. Trataka is a Shatkarma practice. Nauli is a Shatkarma practice. What are the rest?
Kunja.
Kunja. Yeah, but that falls under Vamandauti. Vamandauti is one of the Dauti practices.
Okay.
You know, each of those 6 have a whole bunch of different
okay.
practices, right?
Okay, yeah.
So just let me go through that again. So we've got Nauli, Agnisar Dhoti, Tratak, Basti, Kapalabhati, and Neti. Exactly. Those are the 6 Shatkarma practices. So Agnisar Dhoti looks like this. It's also, I find it very nice to do it in this position. So with Agnisar Dhoti, you do it on an exhalation retention. And after you exhale completely all of the air, and I like to do it, you should do it through your mouth, and quite fast, like don't take a long time about it, because once you've fully exhaled, you're going to do that practice of drawing the belly, the navel, in and letting it go, in and letting it go, like happened naturally when you did this, right? except this time you're on a full exhalation retention and you're allowing the belly to drop and drawing it back in, allowing it to drop and drop back in. I'll show you. So it goes like this. I was on an exhalation retention, right? So I release the bandha and I sit up straight and I do my inhalation. So start with about 7 or 8 or 9, a comfortable number. So full exhalation retention through the mouth. Draw your belly into your spine as much as you can. Release it and let it go. Pumping, kind of pumping. Good. Yeah, that looks great. And doing it quite slowly is a bit more difficult and pretty powerful. So if you consciously allow the belly to release, draw it in, allow it to release, draw it in, allow it to release, at a sort of a rhythmic rate, not too fast, it will really prepare you for Uddiyana Bandha. And please come up and then take your breath in, okay? Release the bandha, because you've got a bit of a bandha going on, right? Before we've even done the bandha. So try a few like that. Good. Nice. That's great. Keep going. Keep going for, I'm going to say, maybe 2 more minutes. Just doing a comfortable number each time. And Laura has opted to stand up and do it. You can do that too. So you could all try it standing up now if you like. And then we can transition right into Uddiyana Bandha. So this really stimulates the heat at the Manipura chakra and draws the prana in there and allows the knots to loosen around the Manipura chakra, the knots of the Manipura chakra around Sushumna. It causes them to loosen up. So then we'll move straight into Uddiyana Bandha, okay? Uddiyana Bandha, exhalation, always only on exhalation retention. And same thing, you inhale naturally and normally. You exhale fast through the mouth. Easiest position to learn Uddiyana Bandha is what you want me to stay here?
No, it's okay. Move back
Is
and
what we
follow.
call I call this short stop position. And hands are generally, the fingers are pointing inward like this with the hands just above the knees. Elbows flare out to the sides, kind of. As you exhale, the head drops forward a little bit. You can just watch me once. Head drops forward a little bit. And then as you draw the belly button in towards the back of the spine and also up, as though to hug the heart with your diaphragm, you get like a full vacuum of the abdominal cavity, basically. It's like a, what's that word?
Concave.
Yeah, completely. It completely creates a vacuum in the abdominal cavity. And then as you approach that state, what happens is that you'll come into a sort of a subtle Jalandhara Bandha. It just kind of happens naturally. And as you come to the place where you've drawn the belly in as much as you can, right? Here's what I always recommend you try to do. And you'll have to try this a few times. At that point, you've got Jalandhara Bandha subtly engaged. You're on a full exhalation retention. The belly is drawn in all the way back as far as you can. At that point, you try to do what's called a false inhale. So your mind thinks, inhale. It's impossible to inhale. You're on a full exhalation retention. You've got Jalandhara Bandha a little bit engaged. There's no way you can inhale. But in your mind, you think inhale. And what happens is it deepens the bandha. It deepens the bandha. You'll see what I mean. So first try it a few times without that false inhalation, okay? So I'll show you. You know, that's my husband on the front of the pamphlet, and he opted to take my mother out shopping today. Thank you. It's very kind of him. But I really like it when he comes because he does it so well. So exhale. Just a second. So I'm gonna, well, what shall I do? I'll go like this when I'm doing the false inhale, so you can see what happens, okay? That'll be the sign, okay? You know what's really good is to stand up on something, or you all get really low, so you can look underneath. So come close and look underneath. It's good to see this false inhalation thing, because it's kind of dramatic, actually. And it's easiest to see somebody doing bandhas when they're standing up on height. I should have thought of that, but anyway, that's okay.
So I'm going to try to film it if you're okay. If you don't mind. All right.
And you're the tiniest person.
That's okay. The interesting sign, yogic signs. Ready?
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, good. I'm ready.
Okay. Make sure you release the bandha and stand up straight before you take your breath, okay? Did you notice?
Yeah, it looks like it was sucking in more.
Yes, that's exactly what happens. And when you do an Uddiyana Bandha with lots of practice, right, you can feel it in your throat. Because, you know, it's a suctioning, clearly. You're suctioning, right? And it goes through Sushumna, that prana is going through the central channel all the way up past Vishuddhi and everything. So you'll often it happens that when people are doing Uddiyana Bandha, they start coughing. It happens, and it's normal and to be expected. So please try. Take your time. Exhale like that. That's a good sign. Everyone starts coughing. I will be happy. Okay, so when everyone comes up for air, I just have a couple more things to point out. And that is that as you come into your Uddiyana Bandha, what you need to do is to straighten your arms. It's almost like you're locking your arms, your hands into your thighs, and even your legs might straighten because of the suction. Okay? So one more time. You see what I mean? I'm like pushing against my legs, and that's assisting with the suctioning of the bandha. So try that. It will make a difference. So for now, you might only be thinking, oh yeah, I'm supposed to straighten my arms. That's okay. That will help your bandha. Straighten yourself up. Push into your arms. Push into your arms. Push into your arms. That's it. Good. Good. Yay. Good. So when you feel ready, try that little false inhale thing if you haven't already. Okay? So when you do the bandha and you think, oh, okay, I'm doing Uddiyana Bandha now, then you apply that little false inhale thing and see what happens.
How many times should you do that?
Well, what I used to do before retreat was I used to do Uddiyana Bandha. I used to do Agni Sardhauti and Uddiyana Bandha every morning while the kettle boiled. Why? Because I hadn't put a single thing in my mouth yet. And that's when you should do this. Really, this is the only time that you really can do it really well. And the kettle's boiling, and what are you going to do, right? You're going to go back to bed. So it's a perfect time. You just stand there in the kitchen and you do your bandhas. Agni Sardhauti. Like I would say 3 sets of 10 or 15 Agni Sardhauti, and then maybe 3 to 5 Uddiyana Bandhas, like this. 3 to 5 on an exhalation retention. And if that doesn't help, your sex life, your prolapse, bladder, uterus, rectum, your ability to do hand balance, your skin, your bowels, I don't know what does. No, I'm serious. And there's like a big long more list, including enlightenment. So it's really worthwhile, and that's a very good time to do it. So I always tell people that do it while the kettle's boiling. Right, Floriana? Isn't that what I tell people? Have you heard me say that before? Yes. It's a really good time. And if you don't drink something that requires boiling the kettle, you should boil the kettle and drink 2 cups of warm water first thing in the morning, if you don't already. You could refer to with that.
Warm water and lemon.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Hmm? Before what? No. Asana? Oh, no, you drink the water after you do the bandhas. Yeah.
What is the difference between this
Mm-hmm.
and the Kapalabhati? Isn't that the same?
Okay. Well, I'll just tell you. So that's Agni Sardhauti, right? Kapalabhati is it's super subtle, and you're not doing anything with your belly. All you're doing in terms of your consciousness is exhaling rapidly. That's all. And yes, while it's true that the belly is doing this little pumping thing, you're not going.
I see. Yeah.
It's a different practice completely.
Okay,
And
so-
Kapalabhati, the purpose of Kapalabhati is to purify the upper nasal passages up into the brain almost. And the purpose of Agnisar is to fire and purify this lower.
I'm sorry, even I can do that here?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So, in the kitchen, I'm saying do it in this position. Not that you have to then bring your meditation cushion into the kitchen. Just do it in that short stop position. Yeah. And the bonus is that the bandhas and stuff like that done standing, it's best on a hard floor, like probably the kitchen floor, tile or something like that. Better than any kind of soft, cushy floor, because you just get this like grounding, and it helps with the vacuum. How did everybody feel about that false inhale thing? Need some work? Yeah. Do you, Sebi?
I'm not sure if I'm
Yeah.
doing the false
Yeah.
inhale, but
Yeah.
I prefer stomach drawn in more.
More when you have that thought, because like I said, you can't actually do an inhale, and it's called Swami Satyananda this is a technique from the Satyananda school, and he calls it false inhale because it can't be an inhale. It's not possible to inhale.
I'm not sure if anyone had some cancer with it when you
Could be. Yeah, it can happen. I've had that before.
intestines or like.
Stuff is really being compressed.
Doesn't sound.
Totally. So if you have, any kind of, like if you've got feces or anything like that that's stuck, it will unstick it very, very effectively and powerfully. So again, the false inhale, it's a thought, right? It's not possible to do it. But it's this thought of trying to inhale, and the only thing that happens is the bandha gets deeper for you. So try one more if you feel like you've got one more in there, and then we'll move on. Ready. Please get a poll from the back of the room there, and we'll spend the rest of our time, which isn't that much, but it's okay, because we'll spend the rest of our time exploring these bandhas and asana. And I haven't left a lot of time for that because it's not that important to me. And I'll tell you why. Because it's much more important to me that we did what we did, and you developed a sensitivity and a heightened awareness, an intensification of your awareness of the chakras and the bandhas, right? Thank you. And then, because without that, you've got nothing. But once you have that, you can translate it into your asana practice yourself, You won't need me to say to you, here you've got to do Jalandhara Bandha or whatever it is, right? So Jalandhara Bandha, the awareness of Jalandhara Bandha comes most easily with Ujjayi breathing, I think, just in terms of a visceral sensation, right? You have that visceral sensation. And it's going right at that chakra point, that the prana is going right at that chakra point. So it's very easy for your brain to hook into it. It's good, right? We're using our physical bodies to access extremely subtle pranic energy concentration points, right? In such a way that eventually it draws the senses in, and you go into a state of pratyahara so effectively that you will lose awareness of your body completely when you do these practices over time. That's the purpose of them. Using the senses and the body to dissolve your awareness of the senses and your body is the purpose. It's cool, right?
So amazing.
It's very amazing, and it's very cool because we have these bodies, we have these bodies, right? And how cool to use the body and the mind to hook into, Manipura chakra, there it is, I got it. And you can, so that was way more important for me to express to you. Did that lady have to leave? Oh no, wait a second. Was there a lady there? Oh yes, of course. Was there? I'm like confused now because there's
There was somebody there. Did she?
no. Did she leave?
I'm not sure.
Or did she just leave it? She left. She left. That the lady who was there
I
left.
think so.
Miriam. Oh, okay. Okay. So that's okay. Maybe if one of you see her, you can tell her that all she missed. Oh, by the way, I should have told you that this video or whatever audio video is available to anyone who is here today. Yeah. So we'll make it available to you. We'll give you a link that you can go to. So if you missed anything, you can pick up on it there. Okay, let's try this. I'll show you, and then you can all try. So we're going to do some stuff for Jalandhara Bandha. Jalandhara Bandha. If you have a bun or something, probably have to let it go. So, when we do, for example, Chaturanga Dandasana, right? Mostly we see this kind of thing, or this kind of thing. Stuff is sagging. So, Chaturanga Dandasana, to hold Chaturanga Dandasana with a complete neutral spine, which means this. Does anybody have an elastic that I could borrow? Thank you very much, Sebi. I just want to put it low so that you can see my spine. So, neutral spine is where the stick contacts your body at the back of the skull, at the sacrum, and at the mid-back. And there's a space of approximately one hand behind your neck here and at the lumbar spine right here. And then everything else is contacting the stick. So, for example, you wouldn't want to be like this or like this, okay? And if you're contacting the stick at those points, you are engaging Jalandhara Bandha in a very subtle way. And as you drop, the tendency is to lose the bandha. Lose the bandha, right? So try plank pose, first of all, like that. And then rest a little bit. And then you can try coming all the way down without losing that alignment at all. So coming all the way down. That's pretty hard. You can do it from your knees. I can do it once. So I won't be able to show it to you again probably, but you can do it from your knees. Or you can do it from your toes. Okay. So let's start with this. Let's start with doing on all fours.
With the pole?
Yeah,
Okay.
with the pole, but just on all fours. And you can play around with that stick, and I'll come around and I'll put my hand behind your neck. Are you facing on all this? I'll come around and put my hand at your lumbar spine and behind your neck, and just give you an idea of how much space you've got there. So just say you need to come back a little. Good. And then bring your head up till your head is touching the stick. Now engage your chin in towards your chest. Very, very uneven stick. What you just did is a subtle form of jhana. Do it again. Engage there. Lengthen the back of your neck. But then your chin into your chest. Feel that? Yes. Good work. That's really good. So that's very subtle engagement of jhana. And then just take a rest. So the lumbar spine space is perfect. Okay, this is too actually. That's great. So that's exactly right. You're lengthening the back of your neck as you engage the chin. Yeah, nice. And so you've got a perfect Jalandhara Bandha, not so deep as in shoulder stand, but totally keeping your neutral spine, keeping your head in alignment with your spine. Great. I can take a rest. So everyone, till I get to you, you can rest if you like, or you can stay there. A little bit too much space here. Close this space off. Good. Until you're patience. You're going to do a little bit more. Good. So we've got about one hand space there now. So now what happened with your skull, right? There you go. That's it. So you're connected. This needs to connect. Good. And then so what I would do is a tiny bit of Ashwini Mudra activation. Good. Did you feel that? Great. And that lessened this space right here. And now the space here is exactly one hand. And you can feel, right? You're just engaged with the chin a little bit like that. And the back of the neck is really long. Nice. Awesome. So you just did very subtle Jalandhara, right? You ready yet? You've already done this. Oh, bless you. So you're just increasing the Jalandhara, right? As you do that. Nice. Good. So here, really activates the other knee. Stick your cylinder in the there. You can even like there. That's it. How's that feel? Good. That's great. Good. Okay, that's Jalandhara Bandha working there, right?
I wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You find it. Good. And so, stick is having a tendency to roll around, right? Around here someplace. So you want to create a little bit of a trough for it. A bit more of a trough here. There you go. And then you're going to want to lengthen the back of your neck. Engage your chin a little. Engage Bandha a little bit more. Think to bring the sternum to your chin. Open those.
So I started to change.
Sternum to your chin. And then tip your pelvis. Good. So, did you feel what you did there with your lower gaze when I tipped your pelvis like that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's much, much better. And see, that gives you a nice straight line. You have a lot of distance here still, right?
Yes.
So you can work with that. You can work with opening the chest like that and lengthening the back of the neck. Okay. I do individual exercise therapy work, so I can get really stuck with one person. Sorry. Okay, so let's try from your knees or your toes, whichever you prefer. Let's all do one Chaturanga Dandasana. I already did mine.
I'm recovering my arm. I won't do that.
You're protecting your arm. Okay, good. Yeah, you could do it from your elbows.
I wanted to ask you one thing. Can you do Mula Bandha with Sept Bandhas?
You must. If you don't,
Yeah, like it's
It really
kind
hurts.
of like it's kind of like natural.
you should with back bends. We'll do that in 1 sec. Oh. Before you begin, please see that the stick is connected to your sacrum, your mid-back, and the back of your skull. Sacrum, mid-back, and the back of your skull. Awesome. Namaskar. So you're losing that spot between the shoulder blades. Can you feel? So yeah, the stick is great, right? The stick is a nice teacher. I love my stick.
Why did you need a 6-foot stick? You're reaching around 6 feet. Why did you need a 6 foot?
You don't. That's 5 probably, right? Is that 5 feet? No, it's not even 5 feet. No, I'm 5 feet. It's
Right.
probably 4 feet.
You wouldn't need a longer stick for anyone who's tall because it's only touching those 3 points.
That's right, but it's easier to keep it on your body if it's a bit longer. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
But it's okay, it doesn't matter.
That's good.
Good information.
Yeah. It's hard, right? It's really a good thing to
Hard to
practice.
get up there.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a good thing to try. Now, here's the other application of Jalandhara Bandha, which is very interesting. You know, in poses like, for example, triangle, right? Trikonasana. Even something, it's not so complicated as Trikonasana. Like, where's my head? Is my head in alignment with my spine? See what I mean? This is a very tricky situation with Trikonasana. So, and even more tricky with, Marissa, will you help me? That picture in the thing, in the asana page, the Jalandhara Bandha one, right? Vashisthasana. So if Mariska is going to hold the stick in the trough of my spine, right? This is Jalandhara Bandha that has to keep me, where do I need to be with my head, right? Unless I'm in perfect neutral, my bandha cannot engage. Somewhere around there maybe? You tell me. It's very tricky. And that same situation exists in Trikonasana, in triangle, and in Ardha Chandrasana, same thing, right? Like where I have to be in neutral spine for me to be able to activate my bandha, my Jalandhara Bandha. Because if you don't have Jalandhara Bandha, you can't do Ardha Chandrasana. You have to have that bandha active, right? Same idea as what I was just showing you with Vashisthasana, right? It's very tricky. Warrior One, same thing. It's very, very tricky. You know what I mean? Right? So try those. Let's do Warrior One first. Try Warrior One. And by the way, you can do it without coming up very high at all. Let me show you. As long as your bandha is engaged and your spine is in neutral, look at that. It's no problem. Kind of. But if your stick is longer, it's also heavier, but you should be able to do it. I like holding my arms in the gravity line in Warrior One, down, just hanging down, because it also gives me an idea of, let your arms hang down, Sevi, to the floor. Just hanging your arms like that, yeah. Good. See, that's such a the sacrum and then back hand, back hand. So what do you need to do
I think it would be better if you're naked.
Probably. Yeah, no, it's true.
It's
Because
sometimes hard to do it with
the
clothes.
clothes are hard to feel, and the clothes interfere with the stick. And also, if the stick is on your bare skin, then it's more friction and it will hold it there better. That's true. So try that, and then just try Vashisthasana. So you can feel, right? Oh, is my stick connected to my sacrum, my mid-back, and the back of my skull? It's a great.
Did you walk around with these?
I used to have my clients strap it to themselves just in walking posture as an exercise. And for you, that might be a good idea.
At home.
Just to open this up a little. Okay, so that's Jalandhara. That is a really good way to understand the action of Jalandhara Bandha. It's a very specific place. You know what I mean? It's a very specific place. It's the place where the stick stays motionless on your back, where you can feel it at the back of the head, in the mid-back, and at the sacrum. That's where it is. That's where subtle Jalandhara Bandha is.
What about just doing practice of like inhaling,
Activating the bandhas.
closing, lifting,
Yeah.
exhale? Like what about like what is a sequence of doing that? Just
In breathing,
yeah.
that's more advanced, right, than doing it in asana. It is more advanced to use the bandhas that way, right? So in a pranayama practice, you might go inhale, activate Mula Bandha, Jalandhara Bandha. Never Uddiyana, remember.
Yeah.
Right?
Just those two.
And then you just you release the lower bandha first, then the upper. Exhale, totally. Activate Mula, Uddiyana, Jalandhara. Exhalation, retention. Again, release from the bottom up. Head up comes straight. Inhale, like that. Okay. So that's Jalandhara Bandha. Let's do a few. Wow, it's getting warm. Let's, huh?
It's warm in here.
Really warm, huh? Suddenly. Of course, we're now moving. Let's do some standing balance and experiment with Mula Bandha. So Mula Bandha is the one that allows you to, as you shift your weight from one foot to the other, it's Mula Bandha that allows you to keep balance. And if you think about it, it's actually Jalandhara as well, because balance is very hard to maintain if you're like this, for example. You know what I mean? You have to be absolutely upright. You can still imagine that stick at those 3 points. As you shift your weight, you should be looking directly ahead of you. Jalandhara is very subtly engaged. It's very difficult to balance on carpet, very difficult to balance on a yoga mat. Both together makes it very difficult to balance, but it's good practice because it is so difficult. And when you activate, when you actually use Mula Bandha, then no matter what you do, it's the Mula that's holding you there. And you can experiment like that, right? So as you shift your weight, you think, oh, Mula Bandha. And then start trying to destabilize yourself. All these sorts of things destabilize us, right? So you're just going to test your stability using Mula Bandha. And if you feel that you're losing your balance, just bring consciousness to Mula Bandha and see what's going on with Mula Bandha, and whether you might have, released it subtly. And then if you do hand balance, you can try at right now if you like, or you can try at home or whenever you practice next. And hand balance is really much easier on a hardwood floor or tile or something like that. Then you can really feel how the bandha floats you up, Like, Mula Bandha, when you apply Mula Bandha to something like Bakasana, crow pose, it's not I'll see if I can show you. It's not, it's kind of like a tip. It's both a seesaw effect of tipping yourself into the pose, but also it's a bandha effect. So, you've got to be able to get very deep. B, you have to have a certain amount of upper body strength, but beyond that, you're just tipping. And floating. So there's no, like, you know what I mean? You're using a seesaw effect and assisting, making gravity help you, and then the toes with the bandhas. So just this consciousness of the bandhas, bring your feet up. So if you do crow pose, then give it a try. If you don't, then you have to practice it for a while, and then you'll be able to use, experience the bandhas, floating your feet up. So try that just for a couple of minutes. And then I wanted to have you experience Mula Bandha in back bends, because Laura asked us about that. So when you use your bandhas to bring you into Bakasana, work on floating both toes off the floor at once. Rather than trying to bring one foot at a time, think about both toes coming up at once.
You said that. That was a very good.
So exhale, and then activate the bandhas. Nice. Yeah. So it becomes very light, It becomes very light. And then more bandha will allow you to stretch through your arms and bring your heels towards your butt a little bit. So do that for a while, and then you'll be nice and warm, and then we can do a Setu Bandha, because we had a special request for a Setu Bandha. Yep. So in any back bends, Cobra, Dhanurasan, Cobra, Setu Bandha, it makes a really big difference to activate Mula Bandha, and it protects your lumbar spine when you do that. So Setu Bandha is a nice one. We can do that, and it offers several options for intensity. So you can lie on your back and bring your heels in towards your buttocks, so that maybe you can just reach your heels with your fingertips. And then as you inhale, you're going to bring your hips up, and then exhale and push through your feet. So you might be in a position like this. Your spine is approximately 45 degrees or something like that. Now, think about activating your bandhas to draw you into a back bend more. And for that, you might bring your elbows together closer underneath your back. You might clasp your hands and press into the floor with your fists. You might do a variety of different things as you push into the feet, activate Mula Bandha, and draw the pelvis up. And then you can think about Jalandhara Bandha. And as you think about Jalandhara Bandha, think about bringing the sternum to your chin. Sternum to chin. And when you're ready to come down, give yourself a little side-to-side twist, windshield wiper or something like that. And then let's try one more back bend just to illustrate Mula Bandha in back bend. And let's do Cobra. This Cobra. When you feel like you can't come up anymore and you're sort of stuck with a back bend, then you can try applying Mula Bandha. And Mula Bandha allows you, and actually, yes, it's Mula Bandha, but it's also very much Sahajoli Mudra in back bend. So try that. come up into your cobra, your comfortable place, for cobra. And once you're there, bring your hands a little further back towards your hips. And then activate mula and sahajali, urethral sphincters. This really protects your back so that you can press through your hands more and deepen into the backbone a little. So the urethral sphincters and mula bandha. Good. And when you're ready to come down, I'll give you one more little clip that you can try and see. Just come down and rest for a breath. Okay. So as you're resting, you can just listen. When you next come up into cobra, imagine that you're sliding your pubic bone down. So you're tipping yourself onto the upper part of your pubic bone as you come into your backbone. I hope that will make sense. Please try it. So as you inhale up into cobra, and you've got mula bandha engaged, and you've got sahajali mudra engaged, right? Tip yourself so that the pubic bone slides down towards your feet. Yeah, good. I think you got it. Did you? Did it feel like it freed your lumbar spine up a little or not? Was I imagining that? No. Did you experience that? No. Okay. So you just have to try that for a while. What it feels like is I'm on my pubic bone right now. Stay on your pubic bone, otherwise it won't really work. So wherever you are in your cobra, stay on your pubic bone, and then slide along your pubic bone so that you're using the pubic bone as what's it called? A tripod? A place to push against. A rooting point. So I'm pushing my pubic bone into the floor, and what happens is that I come towards my belly more. I sort of come towards my belly more. It only works if you've really applied sahajali there. Mm-hmm. Takes the pressure off the low back. It does, doesn't it? Does it? Exactly. So if you're anchored through the pubic bone and you activate sahajali, then you can. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. It's just that it happens that way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it really only works if you keep your pubic bone on the floor as a counter, as a root. Use it as a root, Hello. There's a class in here. So it's 5 past 5. So I'll slowly get you to leave your cobra and come back. Seated position for a second. Hello. We're filming, yeah. Oh, that's okay. And let's just come back to seated position for a minute. So you get the idea, right, with the asanas. You get the idea. You can experiment. So any asanas that are affecting uddiyana, like forward folds, you can think uddiyana, and practices that support uddiyana. Anything that's activating svadhisthana, like back bones, for example, seriously fire up svadhisthana. It's the mudras that work svadhisthana chakra that are going to help you. You know what I mean? So sahajali mudra, ashwini mudra.